Who's right about climate change? And is there really a climate crisis? After disruptive protests in London by climate change activists, the British Parliament declared a symbolic environment and climate change emergency. Politicians backed a call by Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, for rapid and dramatic action to protect the environment. The non-binding motion gave the government 6 months to come up with a plan to restore the UK's natural environment and to deliver a circular, zero-waste economy.
The Committee on Climate Change, an independent group that advises the British government, said that it should effectively eliminate greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Meanwhile, the Paris Climate Change Agreement aims to limit global temperature rise this century to well below 2 Celsius. 189 countries, representing more than 99% of global emissions, have made commitments to action. As of April 2018, 175 parties had ratified the Paris Agreement, but President Trump pulled the USA out of it. Climate change is claimed to be present in every country on every continent, affecting national economies and affecting lives. Weather patterns are changing, sea levels are rising, weather events are becoming more extreme, and greenhouse gas emissions are now at their highest levels in recent history. It is predicted that the world's average surface temperature would rise by over 3 degrees centigrade this century, with the poorest and most vulnerable people being most affected.
Will citizens change their behaviour for the sake of the environment? And how tough should the United Nations be when it comes to the most polluting countries? Simple questions with important answers. Does the public believe the UK government will work proactively to fulfil a call to reduce greenhouse emissions to zero by 2050? We put that question to the public here in central London. This is what they said.
I doubt it. It's quite a big call, that. We should be making progress towards it. Whether we actually hit that target or not, I'm not sure, but it's good to have a target, something to aim towards. But that's quite a big call to meet that target, I'd have thought.
One hopes so, but probably not. No, they don't seem to be doing anything to achieve that. I mean, not enough.
I think it is feasible. Obviously, we have to develop renewable energies, and we have to put a lot of commitment into that, but it is something that we could reach. Obviously we have a goal, but it is a nice thing to do. Yeah?
No, I don't think it's realistic, especially with the trends that we're, as a human race, are heading towards. I don't think there's a lot we can do to stop it. It'd be ideal, it'd be nice, but I don't think it's possible. I feel like it's not realistic, I would say, in 2050, because there's too many discrepancies now that there's no really motivation, I guess.
Well, it's tough, but I think they can. I think that, if you look how the sort of targets for emission reductions have changed over the years, everyone said reducing by 20% was a challenge 5 years ago. We're now 30% below 1990 levels, or I don't know exactly, but yeah. I think technology is moving very fast. I think absolutely. The UK is a great place for renewables, so I think it's genuinely achievable.
I don't think it's possible that we will be able to reduce emissions to zero. I think that's cloud cuckoo land, as we say in the UK. The sixth largest economy, the UK, generates only 1% of the CO2 in the world, the global economy. And yet they're being asked to actually change their habits, change all sorts of things, simply because the rest of the world generates 99% of the problem. There are particular solutions to actually lowering emissions, particularly from vehicles. One of them is a thing called OptiDiesel, for example, I've come across recently. This is a product that actually lowers nitrogen oxide, it lowers particulates, and increases miles per gallon. It's a win-win situation. It's almost like free money for a driver. The government, all they care about is taxing people off the road or banning people on the road. What we need to do is a sensible policy, and this should happen right across the world. It shouldn't be just for the UK.
Well, I think the first thing is to say it's necessary. Governments have to act. Maybe it's a little bit late in the day in terms of really acting as they should have done maybe 20-25 years ago when this was first put out there as being a risk to the world. Do I think they're going to get there? I think that's That's a really difficult question. I think it depends on the government, it depends on will, it depends not just on the government but us all, every individual to do something or other. But it starts with government initiatives and perhaps it moves from there, but that involves not just governments and people but companies, the whole lot. Everybody's got to do a little bit or even a lot to move in the right direction as far as climate change is concerned and reversing the cycle that we're now in.
Could significant change to human activity and behaviour really make a difference to climate change? We asked the public.
But I do think we have the technology to do it, and also because it's now very imperative we've got to sort this out. I think the new technologies will come forward to sort this out. So I feel although it's not an ideal situation, I do feel fairly optimistic that we will sort this out in the end. We have the capability to do that.
I believe it can, with the right will, yes, and probably more information. Get children motivated as well. They seem to be doing very well.
The important thing is to raise awareness and to be able to change your habits in this extent, maybe to regulate more as well. So I think that if we are really committed to change it, we can make a difference.
I think it's idealistic. I mean, it would be ideal. It would be nice to not have to worry about it, but every day you're reading more and more about things happening and oceans and pollution, and it's just awful. I would say that if more people are educated about the subject, that it might be more likely that we could do something to change it.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think, not clearly the sort of transformation process so far has been, far too slow. But I think, once, sort of, you need a kind of disaster to happen really to get people to move. But I think once people get in the mindset, and I sort of feel it might be changing now. I don't know. I sort of feel there is a bit of a shift in opinion, and people prepared to have a bit of extra hassle, a bit of extra cost, and a bit of to change their lifestyles. And I think genuinely they can do it.
I'm not an expert in climate change. I would like to say that the human being is actually responsible for the problems of the climate change. And most certainly drivers and transport, for example, are being blamed for all of the ills, all of the problems, particularly in urban areas, in cities, for the quality of our air. This is completely and manifestly wrong. Transport actually contributes, for example, in London, only 9% of passenger cars are responsible for NOx emissions. And then we go even further to the other end of the spectrum. 16 major oil tankers, major ships in the world, they're responsible for virtually all of the diesel emissions, particularly the sulfur emissions. It is all wrong, and what's happening with politicians today is an easy target is the driver. The driver is an easy target to actually penalise. They can hit them in the pocket, hit small business, etc., which is totally wrong when they are actually manifestly contributing to very little of the emissions problem.
I think some would believe that it's perhaps even too late now, that it's irreversible. This is all by steps and degrees in terms of whether or not we can prevent what's coming in the future, or step by step reverse it in a controlled manner. I kind of have that view that if we, it's not too late. I think we've got to have that view. If we all believe it's too late, then we might as well give up now. But the effects of climate change are there to be seen now. They're out there in terms of what's going on globally: floods, fires, superstorms. All of these type of events are happening, partly due to climate change. So I think in the long term, I think we can get there, but it is going to be step by step, little steps, in order that we can reverse the cycle, step backwards, if you like, rather than going blindly and not achieving anything whatsoever.
The public have options that might help. Use your car less, use less water, use less electricity, switch off electronic devices, don't travel abroad for your holidays, and stay local, recycle everything. How much are individuals really willing to do on a permanent basis to help the environment? We asked them.
I'm hoping that technology will sort of develop so we don't have to give up flying or stuff, but it may be that it has to be rationed. I don't know, but I'm hoping that, and I think stuff has been happening already. We burn less coal than we used to. The move towards electric cars is moving apace, and I can see in 50 years' time there won't be any petrol cars or whatever. So I think we can, but it's hard to give up your lifestyle and sort of stuff that you're used to and luxuries you're used to. but we're going to have to.
I can only speak for people I know, and I think they would. They would do that willingly. I've given up meat for the planet, so I think people would do that.
We could be willing to change if we have a sentiment of urgency. In case of floods or in case of dramatic events, we are really willing to change, but we don't do that in our daily lives for the moment, and we should do more. For example, plastic or just importing fruits and vegetables from all around the globe, it contributes to that, and we are not willing to sacrifice this condition for us.
That's a rough question. I know the big thing right now in America is using reusable straws. Save the turtles is what everyone says. But when you look realistically, the straw pollution makes up for less than 0.03, I think, percent of all the pollution that happens. Most of it comes from bigger companies. So I think people might continue to try doing the small changes, like buying a reusable straw and turning off the lights when they leave the house. But I don't know how much it'll impact on a global scale. I would say that they would like to do that and try to avoid that stuff, but in reality it's sometimes more convenient to use that type of attitude towards it.
I think it's got to get inside people's heads and sort of, it's not bad having a holiday, more locally, or and I guess that's coupled with efficiencies in transport and things like that. Then you can still have holidays and substantially reduce your footprint.
Individual, particularly, and I represent car drivers and the haulage industry, truckers, etc. They're already doing things. They're already contributing considerably. In the UK, the driver, the motorist, is the highest tax motorist in the world. They're already contributing something like 65% every time they fill up their vehicle, fuel taxes, like fuel duty and then VAT on the fuel duty as well. What is happening with that money? We don't know. It doesn't go into repairing roads. It doesn't go into actually improving our environment. No, it doesn't. It goes into, it's not hypothecated. It goes into all sorts of different areas where taxes are spent. What we do need to do, and individuals that can, and they are doing it, there's everything from double glazing, solar panels, all sorts of things people are doing individually. They're using less gas, less electricity because of things like smart meters. All sorts of things are happening. You can't keep blaming it on the individual. What we should be doing is incentivising people to move to cleaner fuels and cleaner technology, but don't punish them in the back pocket.
I think there are a lot of individuals who are actually doing things now. They are aware completely about what to do, not just about climate change, but about the environment in total, if you like. We talk about the plastic world that we're in. We see pictures, horrible pictures of seas and rivers full of plastic, that type of thing. And I think people are taking steps. I think the country as a whole, the UK, is perhaps not the leader, but certainly in the top few in terms of taking action. So in terms of individuals, small things can be done, even turning off your lights, not having your lights on in the house, all over the place, turning down your heating by a notch or two if it's possible, if it's not such a cold day. We can, the big one, I suppose, the big one is the airlines. Fly less. If you can, take holidays closer to home maybe, or take a train. Take showers that are rather than baths. Spend less time in the showers, in the bath if you like. So these small things seem like, well, I'm not making any difference, but if we all do them collectively, they do make one huge difference.
Let's look at some statistics. Despite the focus on transport, it accounts for only 26% of Britain's greenhouse emissions. However, University of Oxford researchers found cutting meat and dairy consumption could reduce someone's food carbon footprint by 73%. And where does the pollution come from? China and the United States together produce nearly 40% of the world's emissions between them.
How should we react to companies promoting increased use of fossil fuels? Should they face legal consequences for polluting and encouraging polluting attitudes? Here's the public's view.
I think it's got to be reasonable. We can't have a perfect sort of just stop everything situation, but so overall I'd say no for now. If new technologies are developing, they're still pushing fossil fuels and there's viable alternatives, then yes, they should be penalised.
But it's not enough, is it? It's not the right step. Why you fine people as a penalty for doing something they've always done. But I think it needs a change of thought and probably legislation. Yes, but what we're not doing enough, are we? We're not selling enough electric cars to people.
It's a good instrument for the shareholders to make a difference, and these companies, of course, they make profit, but we also benefit from them.
Because it's a part of everyday life, you know, between driving and flying and operating machinery. It's just a part of what we do right now. It's hard to make a change. Personally, yeah, I think so. Because, I mean, if they're doing it, and even if it's not intentional, it's still affecting our environment a lot. So.
No, but I think they shouldn't be subsidised. I mean, that's the crazy thing. They're subsidised, and the whole sort of infrastructure is set up around fossil fuels, and that could easily be changed. Whether, I mean, you know, I think the issues they have is kind of investor risk, kind of becoming sort of slightly irrelevant, and so you know, I think once investor sentiment changes for fossil fuels, then you know things could move those companies quite quickly.
Absolutely not. I mean, you can't keep blaming oil companies for the ills of the planet. What they have generated, certainly in the last 100 years, is a planet that our economies are booming, particularly in the UK. We're doing very well indeed. And it's interesting when you look at current marketing of oil by oil companies, you're seeing adverts now that they're actually moving into cleaner fuels, better technology. A lot of oil companies have got electrical charging points. But the most important thing they could do this minute, right now, all oil companies, to actually ingratiate themselves with politicians, is actually to put additives like this product called OptiDiesel. You put it in, it will probably save something like 5 billion litres per year of fuel costs. Surely that's a good thing to do. And by reducing or increasing miles per gallon, you're reducing global warming gas emissions.
Well, at the moment, it is legal. What they're doing is what everybody might do in their position in defending their own self-interests. So for the moment, it's definitely what it is. For the future, I think there has to be, we have to become wise to this. I think that's the start of it. If we become wise, if each individual becomes wise where this propaganda, if you can call it that, is concentrated, where it's coming from and why it's coming from them, as I say, self-interest. It's not just companies, it's political parties as well. Some political parties very much are on the green side, others are completely the opposite. Some of them completely deny climate change. So the climate change deniers, and there's enough of them in this world, they need to be confronted. They need to be confronted for what they are, because climate change is such an important a factor nowadays in terms of our direction of travel, not just maybe for ourselves, but for our children, our children's children. It's the future of the planet Earth. I can't think of anything more important than that.
Should the United Nations and individual countries stop trading with and introduce sanctions against other countries, such as the USA, that don't fully commit to the Paris Agreement goals on the environment?
Anything that has to be targeted to have a specific thing, just sort of pulling down the shutters because we don't like the current regime in the US would be wrong. It wouldn't be productive either. The US is soon become a net producer exporter of fossil fuels. To start laying into it probably won't be that productive. It's probably better to cooperate as much as we can. But again, if they start acting unreasonably, then they obviously have to take a different view. But at the moment, I think it's a bit extreme to stop dealing with the US and other countries.
I think it's evident that there is climate change. Yes, I don't know about boycotting. There are other things to do, perhaps. But I think most Americans I know, and I've lived in America for many years, they're very willing to help the planet. I don't think they all reflect their president's point of view.
In terms of retaliation, we shouldn't force the other countries to be within the community, but we should invite them and we should create the conditions for them to collaborate with us. So maybe we should do things, better. And even though you don't have a strong framework, it is important to have everyone in it. So this is a difficult balance, I think.
I don't even know how you would punish on that scale. I definitely maybe don't agree with the U.S. pulling out, but I don't know how to remedy that or to make it better. So I'm not sure about that either. I wish the U.S. was still part of it, but it's okay. Economically, I guess. I think that they should, because I believe that climate change is a big issue and that we should take action towards it.
I think it would be fantastic if there were, but realistically, is that going to happen? I mean, I've been watching climate politics for 20 years, and it's so frustrating because every time you make progress, you get someone like Trump comes along and just pulls the rug under from everyone. So it's very frustrating. I think personally, it's got to be sort of driven from a lower level, and I think corporates have got a lot, and investors have a lot of kind of work to do in this, and could make a big difference. But governments have to set a framework, but agreeing things kind of internationally is so hard that I wouldn't say give up, but it is a very frustrating process. But you can't have sanctions, right? I mean, it's never going to work.
The politics of climate change worries me intensely. I mean, Donald Trump and let's face it, China as well. Those are the two big areas where global gases are warming is the problem. I don't think we should have sanctions on any of these people. We're just cutting our nose off to spite our face. That'd be the wrong thing to do. I repeat what I've said again and again and again. We need all to get round the table, work together and try and clean up the oil that comes out of the earth. We've got 100 years of oil left. That's what we've got. Let's make it, put additives with it, clean the thing up, and let's move with technology, with hydrogen cells, electricity, all those factors, they're coming along. We don't need cliff edge targets or political mandates to stop or penalise people going about their everyday lives.
That's a really difficult question because it's the economy, it's GDP versus saving the world, if you like. And those two things don't sit together very easily. Personally, I'm very sad, disappointed and somewhat angry about Trump's stand. Political parties in the world, there are some leading nations like the US who have taken not just the backseat but going in reverse as far as climate change is concerned. So as I said to you, it's a difficult situation in terms of sanctions or anything against these countries, but certainly waking up. We've all got to vote, and that's where it starts and finishes. So when you go out and vote, whether you're in the United States, Britain or wherever, find out whether these people are pro-climate change, deniers, whatever. Find out what the situation is and use your vote proactively in terms of making sure that what you're looking for is delivered. So we're talking about increased flooding, we're talking about superstorms that will become superstorms, we're talking about wildfires. We've seen them, we've seen the effects of this. Unprecedented, unpredictable weather that's going to affect populations, not just a small village or a town here or there, but whole populations in whole countries. That's going to, in the end, result in forced migration, all of these type of things that cause political unrest, political and economic unrest.
The self-styled demonstration group Extinction Rebellion obstructed life in London for many days, causing Parliament to pass a commitment to take action about climate change. However, there is still doubt and confusion about what can and should be done, with many members of the public not convinced about the scale of the issue or the commitment of humanity to do something about it.
There are ways we can reduce our environmental footprint right now. Cleaner power, less travel, more recycling, fuel-enhancing additives which exist today, and even population control. But there is genuine doubt about what needs to happen. Let's remember the most polluting country on earth, America, has even withdrawn from the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Actions speak louder than words. But for those who are not even concerned about the climate change agenda, it's hardly surprising that action doesn't follow.